Welcome back into the Daily Dose. I'm Jeff Hansen. Man, that song kind of gets me going now. I was a little bit iffy on the song when we first rolled out the video intro. Now it kind of gets me bumping, gets me excited, gets me ready to talk about BYU football. As always, Daily Dose brought to you by give'emhellbrigham.com or gehb.co if that's what you're into, because the other one is too long. Both will take you to our website. Sign up for our freemium style newsletter. There's a free newsletter that goes out a couple times a week. And there's a premium newsletter that you can pay, get access to more VIP content, behind the scenes type stuff, inside information, and access to our VIP Discord channel where we have north of 1,000 BYU fans always talking BYU football. It's great. It's a lot of fun. GEHB.co or give'emhellbrigham.com. You saw the big announcement yesterday, CougarFeast.com from Feastbox. It's changing the way we game day, folks. This is really, really cool. $160 gets you 2 proteins, 2 sides, an extra, what they call an extra, which is, I guess, like an appetizer or a third side, and $100 of BYU swag. Enough food to feed 12 people, $100 BYU swag, all in a BYU branded box, delivered right to your door before every game day this season. Check it out at CougarFeast.com. I've had the food. It's delicious. Also, I'm fat. You don't trust skinny people's opinion about food. You trust people who look like this, and I'm telling you, it's quality food. You won't be disappointed. That comes to like $13 a person. So if you can't get to the away game, have a little tailgate at your house and let Feastbox take care of the cooking for you. 10% of every sale goes to their Full of Hope Foundation, where they're feeding the hungry. It's an awesome mission and an awesome foundation. CougarFeast.com. Check it out. Fall camp started yesterday. So today we're going to do something. It's day one, really, of what we're going to do throughout the season, where we take the press conference quotes and we pull out the ones that matter the most and we kind of delve into them. Now, on day one, that's a little bit more difficult because everything is so vanilla on day one. But we're going to take the 4 quotes that I think mattered most from BYU's media availability yesterday, and we're going to talk through it. First one, I'll read it verbatim from Kalani Sitake. But he's talking about the newcomers and transfers, and he says, the unknowns can run, and they're very athletic, so that's a good sign. Our veteran players have done a great job teaching during player-run practices during the offseason. You can see that. They look good, and they're understanding the technique. That's a huge credit to what the players have done and the leadership we have on our team. This kind of speaks to the assimilation process for all of these new transfers that are joining the program. Guys like Deion Smith, guys like Harrison Taggart. I mean, there's a lot of guys that we could go down the list. AJ Vongphachon, players who joined after spring ball and are all kind of earmarked to have huge roles on this team. BYU has to get them up to speed really, really quickly. I like the way that Kalani kind of downplayed the I guess the urgency, maybe not the urgency, but maybe the severity of this problem by saying, well, the unknowns, they all can run and they're really athletic. So that's great. And he's right. They are unknown. They do have to learn the scheme. They do have to figure out where they fit on the roster, but they can run. They're athletic. They're really good football players. And you'd rather have unknowns that are really good football players than unknowns that are just unknown. And BYU kind of checked that box. Player run practices, that's fantastic. You hope that that kind of culture can continue year over year, because I think we're still going to see seniors added out of the transfer portal every year. I don't think it's going to be in mass like it was this season, but it's always going to be a part of BYU football going forward. So that culture, that leadership, that hopefully can stay year over year. The next quote, I want to talk about Keaton Slovis's quote. He's talking about Aaron Roderick. And he said, he is so good at finding the right pieces and making it work. You are going to have great plays, but if you don't have the right personnel for those plays, they are not going to work. He is one of the best in the country because he puts it all in place for the personnel we have. And I don't know if we give Aaron Roderick enough credit for that. I'm glad that Slovis pulled that out and singled out Aaron Roderick's ability to find guys that fit his scheme. If you look at Keaton Slovis and you look at his history, particularly at USC, the BYU offense, while very, very good and a lot of reasons to be excited about it this year, it pales completely in comparison to what Keaton Slovis was working with during his freshman and sophomore seasons at USC. I mean, he was dealing with NFL players at every position. I think he had 3 NFL wide receivers. I think he had 3 NFL offensive linemen. Slovis was surrounded by NFL talent at USC. But one thing that Aaron Roderick does well, maybe he doesn't have that level of NFL talent here in Provo, but he does have talent that fits in Provo. And that's kind of a throwback to what Lavelle would do, what Norm Chow would do, right? Glenn Kozlowski was not an NFL, first round type draft pick, but he had a pretty darn good career because they figured out how he fit within the BYU offense. Eric Drage, I mean, throughout history, right? We don't need to name names. You could go and you could figure 20 names of players that had a huge impact at BYU, but weren't necessarily NFL talents. And I think that that's what Aaron Roderick is doing here. Now he's getting better. He's got more closer to NFL talent, and I think he's got more NFL talent on his roster. But one of his best attributes is finding guys and finding schemes and plays that work for them. That is the sign of a good coach, and Aaron Roderick is a great coach. Next quote from Micah Harper talking about some of the players who stood out in practice, and it's day one. It's really tough. But he said, I think Dylan Flowers, a Southern Utah transfer, stood out to me. Isaiah Glasker, my old roommate last year, is a dog at the end of the day. Very athletic linebacker. Expect great things from him for sure. We've seen highlights. Isaiah Glasker had an interception. I think Jake Retzloff threw the ball, and Isaiah Glasker, he cut the route and pulled down an interception. I want to talk about Isaiah Glasker. We've talked about him on the Daily Dose before. I can tell you, Justin Enna is incredibly excited about the potential that Isaiah Glasker brings. I know the linebacker room. We know Ben Bywater, Max Tooley, Vonk Pachon, Harrison Taggart, the Kafusis, Chaz Ayu. We know all of these guys. I would not be surprised if you see Isaiah Glasker. Maybe he doesn't start, but he's one of the first guys to rotate in. I wouldn't be that surprised if you see him ultimately crack the starting lineup. Even with all of the talent, even with all of those stars who are very, very good players, Isaiah Glasker has that kind of reputation right now in that linebacker room. He's big, he's long, he's athletic. He's really, really good. When BYU signed him out of Bingham High School, he didn't have any other offers, and everybody kind of pegged him as a safety. He grew a little bit over the last couple of years, and now he's a really athletic linebacker. And in this Jay Hill defensive scheme that wants a hybrid type linebacker who can play coverage but can also get after the quarterback, he's kind of an ideal fit. He's 6'5". He can hang in coverage. He's got elite pass rushing skills. Isaiah Glasker can play, and I think we need to start talking about him more now. You're already hearing it from Micah Harper. We heard it throughout spring ball. I can tell you from sources and conversations that I've had that Justin Enna really likes Isaiah Glasker. It might be time to start revving up the engine on the Isaiah Glasker hype train, because the guy's coming and the guy is very good. Last quote I want to talk about is from Jay Hill, and he's talking about the characteristics of his defense and what makes a great defense. And he said, and this is such an adjustment from where BYU has been in the past. He says, great players. Number one, I think the scheme, technique, fundamentals that you teach, they're all critical, but none of it matters if you don't have great players. We need players to step up. They have to learn the schemes. They have to learn the systems. And then bottom line, great defense comes down to being tough and having discipline and tackling. I mean, that's music to the ears of everybody, right? I mean, BYU wants to have players who are disciplined. Every BYU fan who watched the last couple of years of Elisa Tuiaki's defenses, oh, man, discipline and tough and tackling, those are music to our ears. But I love the way that Jay Hill answered that question. What's the secret to a good defense? It's having good players. That's the difference. You can't out-scheme really, really good talent, not at the Big 12 level, right? You can out-scheme. If the talent is close, scheme can get you over the top. If you only trail a little bit in talent, scheme can get you over the top. Scheme can also win you a random game, right? I mean, BYU can beat Miami at home, number one Miami at home with a lesser talented roster. Scheme can do that on a one-off basis. But to do that week over week and time after time, year over year, that's just an impossible task. At some point, you need talent to get you where you want to go. And the old defensive coaching staff didn't talk enough about talent. They talked a lot about scheme. I love hearing this from Jay Hill. Great players is what makes great defense. What makes elite defense is how those great players learn their jobs and what the scheme they're in and the game plans. That's what can make a defense elite. But BYU is so far away from being elite, they've got to focus on being a good defense first. And to get to be a good defense, you have to have great players. Jay Hill talked about it yesterday. The linebacker room suddenly very deep after spring ball, after looking like it wasn't going to be very deep. There's a lot of guys who could play at the linebacker spot. He talked about the secondary, particularly the corners. We've talked about Camden Garrett on this show. Camden Garrett's a dude, and he's going to play a lot. There's a lot of young guys that are going to step up. We know about Eddie Heckard and Jacob Robinson. We heard Micah Harper talk about Dylan Flowers. There's a lot of corners that are going to step up. BYU has more talent on this defense this year than they have in the last decade since Kyle Van Noy was running around on the defense for BYU. And that is why we should feel confident that BYU's defense will be good in 2023. Will they be elite? Will they be great? Time will tell, but I'm confident because of the requisite amount of talent that they've got, that they have everything they need to be a good defense. And now it's up to Jay Hill coaching those players up, implementing that scheme, and seeing how fast things can come together on the defensive side of the ball. Fall camp is underway. Super excited about it. Obviously, we're going to have a ton of coverage about fall camp throughout the month. We're doing our best here for you folks to not just focus on college football realignment, but to talk about actual football here at the Daily Dose, because after all, that's what we're all here for. We want to watch football. We're a month away now. It's August 2nd today. Kickoff is on September 2nd against Sam Houston State. Thank you so much for your support of the show. Until next time, give them hell.